Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm here to share with you the findings from an analysis we conducted on the impact of ongoing macroeconomic reforms in Nigeria. And the outline for the presentation, it's pretty straightforward. We have the background, the model, the qualitative analysis, and the policy recommendations. So we start off with the basic trends in terms of the issues, the data, the evidence in terms of what had happened immediately after the introduction of this major reforms. And three of these major reforms include the PMS subsidy removal, the electricity tariff hike, and then the floating of the naira. And these have had, direct and immediate impacts on different economic indicators. The first and obvious one being the increase in PMS price, as we can see in the chart on the extreme left. And then, of course, the floating of the naira also led to a significant spike in the naira-dollar exchange rate. And then, of course, we saw a significant increase in Band A tariff to about 210 naira per kilowatt per hour. These reforms, of course, have had a significant impact on key macroeconomic indicators. We've seen an improvement in gross external reserves. We've seen an improvement in FAC allocation as well as debt servicing. But then on the flip side, we've also seen that it has led to an increase in the cost of living and has also eroded welfare and affected operational decisions of firms. As we can see here, the average cost of healthy diet has increased more than doubled from 515 naira to 1,611. We've also seen an increase in the average cost of intercity transportation, and the average price of rent has also gone up significantly, while the cost of a healthy diet in terms of nutritional intake has, taken an upward trend, throughout the review period that is being considered. Of course, the government did not just sit down and fold its arm. It took several measures to help, cushion these shocks. The first most important one being the increase in minimum wage. And after that, we also saw conditional cash transfer programs that were launched in October 2023. But again, there was a delay in the implementation, which, of course, had a lead because it didn't start until late 2024. So basically, this sort of missed a critical window in terms of when households actually needed this relief. Of course, we saw the conditional cash transfer of 75,000 naira, which was also insufficient to sort of cushion the impact of the shock. And then, of course, there were several food security initiatives as well, ranging from, beefing up security around agricultural activities, oil irrigation systems to boost farming and improve storage and bad roads and whatnot. So beyond the evidence, what we did was to use two approaches to assess some of these reforms. The first is the quantitative analysis, and here we use a dynamic computable general equilibrium model to test the impact of PMS subsidy removal as well as electricity price tariffs. And of course, here we looked at the impact on several macroeconomic indicators, and then we also looked at the distributional impacts by moving from the macro to the micro impact. And then, of course, we complemented the quantitative analysis with, qualitative analysis through the use of focus group discussion, where we accounted for a diverse number of stakeholders to provide critical contextual insights into how household consumption decisions, as well as firm or business operational decisions, have been impacted by these various reforms. So we start off with the model in terms of what we did. As I said earlier, we used a standard PEP1T dynamic general equilibrium model that is recursive to account for both the supply and demand side impact of various reforms. What did we test? So the analysis was predicated on four policy scenarios. The first one is the removal of the PMS subsidy. But then we also accounted for the removal. We complemented this removal with the cash transfers to the most vulnerable groups. And then the third scenario was the removal of electricity tariffs alone. And then we also combined it with cash transfers as well. So the idea was to look at how these reforms or these policy shocks would affect the dynamic path of key macroeconomic indicators, as well as micro indicators as well. Now, on the other side, we also, so in terms of the data, we use the 2018, which is the most recent data available for modeling using the CGA model. We use the 2018 social accounting matrix, which is a representative, provides a representative snapshot of the Nigerian economy. It captures intersectoral linkages as well as the relationship or the circular flow of income between different economic agents within the economy and with the rest of the world. So in terms of the results, the first finding is we looked at this. So if you look at the rows, you would see the first row looks at the reform-only scenario in terms of the impact, and then the second one looks at the reform, the PMS subsidy removal combined with the social protection or social transfers. So we'll see that the impact on prices, the initial impact on prices is 2.6%, but then when combined with social transfers, we saw that the social transfers sort of had an inflationary impact. The effect on firm investment or how businesses spend was negative 2.4% and even worsened with social transfers, while firm income had a positive impact in both scenarios and was slightly higher when the scenario was combined with social protection. So in terms of government saving, we saw a very huge drop in government savings. But again, this is very indicative because we're still looking at this again. And then, of course, if you look at government investment, we also saw a significant increase in it. But then we see a contraction in real GDP from 1.3% for the PMS removal scenario alone. But when combined with social protection, we see a decline. Again, that's the reason for some of this could be traced to, the decline we saw in firm investment as well as the increase in prices. So here we look at the, sort of the trend, the impact, the dynamic path impact of the PMS subsidy removal on household consumption. And we look at this in the context of the impact on high-income rural households, low-income rural households, middle-income rural households, as well as low-income urban households. And here we see that the impact of the scenario. So the blue bars represent the PMS subsidy removal scenarios, while the gray bars represent the PMS subsidy removal combined with the PMS subsidy removal. And we can see that consumption sort of declined over time for high-income households. For middle-income households, it even becomes negative after the third year, which is starting from 2025. While for low-income rural households, we could see that the impact on consumption was high, but then it was moderated by the social transfers, and the same applies to low-income urban households as well. Okay, so the micro, in terms of the micro impact of the PMS subsidy removal, here we sort of moved from the macro results to the micro results. And here we see that the poverty headcount worsened, after the subsidy removal. From the baseline of 50%, it increased to 63%. But we see that it remains 63% even when social protection was introduced. So this means that the social protection programs might not have, the delays in the social protection or the quantum was not enough to sort of mitigate the effect on poverty. But again, we see that for high-income households, they're sort of insulated from the results. And then, of course, from the national perspective, we see a worsening of the poverty indicator to 63.3%, but then it's moderated to 56.2% when social transfers were introduced. We also have similar numbers for the poverty gap and severity of poverty. But what is most striking here is that the effect on high-income households is neutral across board. So here we look at now the electricity tariff removal in terms of what happened. Here, as we can see, the impact on consumer prices was 0.26%. But then when social protection was introduced, it improves marginally by 0.52%. Firm investment is also positive across board before and after, but it drops a little bit when social protection was introduced. Again, here, if we look at the impact on real GDP, it's 0.42 for the electricity tariff hike alone scenario, but sort of comes down a bit to 0.21. Please note that these are just the average prices over the period that we considered. So here again, we look at the impact, the dynamic impact on household consumption over time, starting from 2023 to 2027. We see the cascading of the high-income rural household in terms of its impact from the blue bars. And then we see that the social transfers were quite effective in terms of, mitigating the impact on consumption of households, high-income households, as well as low-income households and low-income urban households. So social transfers were actually effective here in dampening the impact of electricity reforms. Again, this is quite obvious because only the band A households experience the electricity tariff hikes, but then the impact on the other household groups could be due to the trickle-down effect or sort of multiplier effect of that. Here we look at the effects of the electricity tariff removal on poverty. Again, we see that for the headcount, if you look at the headcount we saw an increment after the subsidy removal, and even with the introduction of the social transfers, we didn't see any change. The same applied to high-income households, which, as expected, is relatively lower, and for national income and for the national poverty headcount as well. So what are the key takeaways from the numbers? First, we see that PMS subsidies sort of pushed up average prices with, inflationary impacts being amplified by social transfers. And of course, we see a contraction in real GDP under the PMS subsidy removal, but an increase following the electricity tariff reform. And then, of course, in terms of household consumption, we see that for all the groups, for all the segments that we have considered, consumption declined after both scenarios, but social transfers sort of cushioned the impact, especially for the low-income households. In terms of firm investments and income moved in opposite direction. Fuel subsidy removal sort of reduced firm-level investment while increasing its income, while electricity tariffs had the reverse impact. So poverty increased, as we saw, but with limited relief from the delay in deploying the transfers. National poverty numbers increased following both the PMS and electricity tariff reforms, and social transfers sort of offered, marginal reductions in poverty headcount, but there was little or no impact in terms of what was happening to high-income households. So the other side of the analysis is the qualitative bit, where we focused on people, engaged with people to hear what was really going on. And here we looked at focus group discussion across the 6 geopolitical zones, just to examine how households and firms have experienced, interpreted and adjusted to some of these reforms. So here we use the purposive stratified sampling, and of course 12 FGDs were considered, 2 sessions for 1 state across the 6 geopolitical zones. Of course, we considered both the demand side and the supply side in terms of households as well as businesses. And of course, there was the sample was well covered in terms of at least 50% were covered by women and youth. And of course, basically, this was to account for heterogeneity. And how did we do it? We used semi-structured protocol, and data was analyzed based on thematic analysis. Excuse me. So basically, these are the 5 themes that we considered. And the first one, in terms of the impact on households, is that what households said was that they acknowledged that the reforms were inevitable and required, given the prevailing economic circumstance, but they felt that they were blindsided by the abruptness of the policy announcement. In terms of the immediate impact of the reforms, it sort of eroded the purchasing power of households across different groups that were considered. In terms of the distributional impacts, it had a disproportionate impact on especially the most vulnerable groups: children, women, retirees, and residents in rural communities. So we also looked at the coping and adjustment mechanism. And here households adapted to shocks, not through recovery, but through sacrifice. They started commuting by foot. They ate less. They moved from 111 to 001, or, stuff like that. So they, managing, cutting electricity use, borrowing, depleting savings and stuff like that. So the last one, thematic area, is government and non-state responses. And here, households reported little or no meaningful support that is coming from the government side. Now, in terms of business, along the same thematic areas, businesses, in terms of awareness and understanding, businesses also accepted the, fundamentals or the driving factors behind all of these reforms. But of course, they made a case that the reforms should have been adopted, using a more gradual approach rather than the sudden implementation. In terms of the immediate impact, of course, businesses said, increase their operational costs, pushing many businesses to sort of downsize as transaction costs or operational costs increased. Some had to downsize by laying off workers, or they had to relocate or shut down completely. So businesses coped also by raising prices, downsizing, and, switching towards alternative energy sources. In terms of state or government support from the government, businesses, of course, said they received no meaningful support, with promises widely seen as unfulfilled or insufficient. So again, the 4 key recommendations come out from this study that we have done. The first one has to do with, sequencing the reforms gradually, not simultaneously. This means that, future reforms should be sort of phased rather than, phased and also predicated on very rigorous empirical assessment. And again, the idea is to give people time to adjust and to build up resilience towards the potential negative impacts of the reforms. The second one is to build and reform the social protection system. This has to do around redesigning, scaling up the program, building up confidence in the National Social Register, and ensuring, of course, timely deployment of some of these funds to most vulnerable groups who need them the most. The third one is targeted relief to sensitive sectors or very, very critical sectors, such as those related to food, logistics, transportation. Of course, this would help stabilize prices in those sectors where critical items that households consume are required. So the last one has to do with the reform of government's communication approach of this reform. So it's not enough to just embark on these reforms, but rather communicating reforms is key. Rebuilding trust as social capital, providing opportunity for empathetic and continuous dialogue, I think would be very, very helpful. Of course, acknowledging that, the reforms are not as easy as they seem, but efforts are being made to sort of address these reforms. So thank you very much, and we look forward to your comments and attention.